You're listening to Cosmic Cousins Soul-Centered Astrology. For grounding that ass from all the New Age sass. I am your host, Jeff Henshaw. Cosmic Cousins is a new and full moon podcast ritual. It's released on every new and full moon, and it is here to honor the interconnectedness of our universal family through embodied health, self-discovery, and deeper learning. Hey, Cosmic Cousins. Here we are. We're 3 weeks into Scorpio season, 3/4 of the way. I'm recording this. It is November 13th, Friday the 13th in the year 2020, and we're just a day before the Scorpio New Moon. And there's a lot of intense transformation going on in the world around us. Quite literally for me right now, the building that's next door to my apartment building is being demolished and knocked down. And this is, apparently it was like this old Chinese restaurant that was also a karaoke bar that was quite iconic here in Portland. And it's kind of like the end of an era. It's kind of been abandoned for since I've been here for about 4 months now. And if you hear things in the background being knocked down, that's it. And it feels quite appropriate for this Scorpio New Moon that is also connecting us to Pluto and Capricorn, which is transformation, death, and rebirth to the structures. But we also see this in the world around us, quite literally with nature. If you're on the northern hemisphere, I'm looking out my window, and this past 2 weeks, this tree outside my window has been vibrant and yellow. And now I'm looking at the tree and there's only, a few leaves left on the tree. And so we're here in this time of death and release. And so we get to honor that here on this new moon. I'm wearing all black. I didn't even mean to do that, but that feels quite introspective that Scorpio might inspire us to do. So the tarot cards I have out, if you're new here on the show, I always will bring out the tarot cards that correlate to whatever astrological energy we're moving through. Always, I haven't mentioned this on previous podcast episodes, but always you can use the High Priestess on both the new and the full moon. The High Priestess represents the moon in the tarot. So if you'd like, you could bring the High Priestess out. That feels appropriate for the Scorpio New Moon especially. And then we've got the Death card, which is the soul growth for Scorpio. We have Judgment, which is the representation of Pluto. You can also bring out the Tower card. That just came to me. I haven't placed it out yet, so I'm going to start looking through my deck for the Tower card. This is Mars, which is Scorpio's traditional ruling planet. And then we have the King of Cups, which I like to call the embodiment. And it's fixed water. Kings are fixed. Cups are water. So these are the 4 cards, and 5 if you bring out the High Priestess too, that you could be meditating on this Scorpio New Moon. And we're going to dive deep into them here on this episode, particularly the Judgment card. I'm going to talk to you on this episode about Pluto's connection to Judgment, and also this century as a Judgment century, since it's 2020. This is a double Judgment year is what I'm calling it. And so I'll explore that on this episode too. We'll talk about Mars stationing direct this week. We're also going to talk about the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, the third and final conjunction. So there's a lot of interesting alignments happening this week right here, very much related to Scorpio, which is ruled by both Mars and Pluto. Mars and Pluto are very active this week, and it's cool to see when that aligns. So yes, the leaves are falling outside, wearing all black, intense buildings being, knocked down. We've got our tarot cards out. I also have this candle that I purchased back in June. So probably right around when it was eclipse season, and I'm coming here to the close of this candle. So I'm lighting it right now. I also have some wilting flowers and roses here on my altar as well. I mentioned on the Taurus full moon that I bought roses. Taurus is connecting us to nature and life, and that on this Scorpio new moon, I will be taking these flowers in ritual to the water to release. And so I invited you into that ritual with me on the Taurus full moon. So even if you don't have wilting roses, you could still take something to the water and release it. And so we'll get deeper into that on this episode in a moment. But for now, I would like to share with you that on this week's Scorpio New Moon podcast episode, you'll get to enjoy a conversation with Scorpio Sun Kirah Tabourn. Kirah is an astrologer and creative and is the host of the podcast The Strology Show, is the director of Fresh Voices in Astrology, and is the founder of NFLUX Magazine. And I had a really great time talking to Kirah. It was about an hour conversation. We dive deep into Kirah's birth chart, which I think is really cool. And it's something that I think is quite unique to this show, is that when I have people on, I really just like to get intimate with them. And that's what we did. We went into her journey as an astrologer and looked at her birth chart. And so some of the topics that we cover in our conversation, we talk about Scorpio and its connection to the desert and resiliency. And we talk about Joe Biden's birth chart, Aries moon as the bold leader for inclusivity. We talk about Venus and Libra opposite Aries moon. Kirah gives us a beautiful interpretation and take on the 11th house. We also talk about generational astrology, what life is like as a Pisces rising, and with Neptune being in Pisces. So it's a really cool conversation. So stick around for that. That will be later on in the episode. But for now, before we transition in this episode, I do have some updates and announcements for you. So just go ahead and get those out of the way. But for anyone who's new to the show, my name is Jeff Henshaw. I am an astrologer and a tarot reader. For those of you that tune in, you already know that. But yes, I have openings for both astrology readings and tarot readings. Recently, I have been booking up more quickly, so I currently don't have any openings until February of 2021. If you know you're wanting to work with me, please be sure to book a reading so that you can ensure you're able to get a reading. Upcoming courses and mentorships, I keep teasing that I'm going to be releasing information on that, but I am still processing a lot of continual changes that are occurring in my life and within my close network of family and friends. And so over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of intensity in my life, including like some very Scorpio themes. It's quite related, so I'm going to share that with you. But I had a friend who is diagnosed with brain cancer. A family friend unexpectedly passed away. And then I also have friends and extended family members that are testing positive for COVID-19. Last week, I went and got tested for the first time, and my results came back negative. But there's just been, and then with the intensity of the election, I'm sure a lot of you have been feeling, low energy because of that heightened time. It's just been an intense time. So I'm not making any announcements as far as courses and mentorship offerings, but I will have information out on that soon. In the meantime, if you do value the time and energy I put into my newsletter and into this podcast, please consider signing up to become a Patreon member of the show. And you can go to patreon.com/Cosmic Cousins, or you can purchase a workshop download. I have some workshop downloads available. Black Moon, Lilith, Unleash the Queer Witch in your chart, Mars, Divine Ambition, and Saturn, Become Your Own Daddy. I don't think that's what I called it, but that's what I'm going to call it right now. So I have Saturn, Black Moon, Lilith, and Mars workshop downloads available. And so in whatever way you can support, that would be great as I continue to offer this podcast to you and the community free of charge. It's an honor as always to be here with you. And at this time, let's transition into this week's Scorpio New Moon podcast episode. I unearth, I purge, I renew. I unearth, I purge, I renew. Each time we have a new and full moon podcast ritual, I offer to you 3 phrases that I am intuitively picking up on and feeling in my life and in the world around me. And so those are the phrases we have this week. You could pull a tarot card for each one of those. I have been seeing people do that on Instagram and tagging me and posting those. I think that's rather cool. You could also journal with these phrases, fill in the blank, or just even meditate on them. I know for me, like, it just becomes like a little metronome mantra, we could call it. I unearth, I purge, I renew. This is our Scorpio New Moon. The actual date for this new moon, if you're on the West Coast where I am, this is Pacific Standard Time. This new moon is going to be on Saturday, November 14th. 2020 at 9:07 p.m. That means a lot of you are probably experiencing this on Sunday morning, really early in the morning. On the East Coast, this would be at midnight, 12:07 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 15th. Either way, this whole weekend is the Scorpio New Moon portal, Saturday, Sunday, and it's occurring at the 23rd degree of Scorpio with 17 minutes. So you can look to your chart at this degree to see where that might be activating for you. I know for me, I have a Scorpio midheaven at the 25th degree, and the midheaven is the role in the public. It is the way that you hold space for others. And so I am planting new seeds of intention here for the new moon around my public appearance and you know, the way that I hold space for you all in a ritualistic Scorpio-like way of rebirth and transformation and honoring of your ancestors, all of that. This is just realigning with those principles for me. That's where it hits up in my chart. So if you are a Scorpio, Sun, Moon, Rising, this is your new moon. And particularly those who are Scorpio Sun, happy birthday to you. Happy solar return. And if you are a Taurus, this is your polar sign, and you might also have invitations on this new moon for how you as a Taurus evolve through your polar sign. Yeah, so hey, Scorpio, sending you all love. And yes, so over the past few weeks, you know, there has been a lot of intensity going on in the world. And just in general, the year 2020 has been a very Plutonian year, which we'll talk about in a moment. But for now, this Scorpio new moon really offers us a time to be present with it all. The death that has occurred in the world around us, quite literally, with the pandemic, but also the ways that parts of you have died, or the ways that you've gone through transformation. This is within your own life and also in the collective at large. This death desires your attention and respect here on the Scorpio new moon. And so whatever heightened emotions you've experienced this year are particularly over the last 3 weeks since the sun entered the fixed water sign of Scorpio, it finds a resting point to nestle and release here on this Scorpio new moon, because new moon is much more internal, right? So this is a time of passionate introversion is what I like to think of here with Scorpio. Passionate introversion. The energy is really well received through intimacy. And so this can be intimacy with yourself, you know, really gifting yourself that time. And with Mars and Aries, there is a focus on individuality. This is intimacy with your desires. What do you desire deep down underneath the surface? Maybe things that you don't even share with people. Scorpio is also going to connect us to fear. And there's been a lot of fear floating around. And it's a time to get intimate with those fears and kind of ask yourself, you know, what are the deeper psychological implications there? Rage, fury, sorrow, grief. These are just many of the other Scorpio emotions that we might think of. And this new moon is the time to honor darkness and the shadow. So we are acknowledging and bowing to the themes of shadows, death, secrets, addiction, compulsion, sexuality, depression. I mean, this is the new moon to go really within. And so for some, the invitations of this new moon may feel really intense and raw, in which case, remember, new moons offer a time for self-care too. So be gentle with yourself and others. This is a great time to cleanse and smudge your space. Great time to honor your ancestors, Spending time with water helps. I know on my altar here, I have some rose water too. Venus is in Libra right now, so bringing in some beauty into your life. Spending time with water, this helps to awaken reflection, emotional healing. It helps to unlock emotions too if you find that you're in this like fixed water, like stuck emotions. So if able, and I mentioned this earlier, take a walk by a river or a lake, take a bath. These are some great things that we can do. And, some questions to ponder here is, what deep desire lies beneath the surface that's ready to be unearthed? So this is one of the phrases that we have is I unearth. And so let's look at the definition of unearth. I'm interested. Discover. Find something that is hidden, lost, or kept secret by investigation or research. Unearth. So this is the vibe. This is the Scorpio New Moon vibe. And, so again, what deep desires lie beneath the surface that are ready to be unearthed? What are you willing to let go of and release to make space for the new? Connect with the color red. This is great for Scorpio. When we think of Mars, I'm also looking at, if you look at the death card in the Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial, the horse's eyes that the death is riding in on are vibrant red, like this bright, intense, passionate red. I'm seeing the wings of the angel on the Judgment card with red. The King of Cups has red around the cloak. And then the Tower card, of course, has red coming through too. But connecting with the color red is great. This helps us to harness our passion and desire for renewal here. So place a red rose at the base of a tree or into the water. Process, forgive, release, let go of. Let the parts of you that are ready to die shed away. And as the world around us continues to let go and to grieve and to transform, let's call upon the principles of compassion. This is Scorpio as it evolves. We can look at the King of Cups to offer some, depiction of that here, but call upon the power of compassion and understanding to aid you in whatever transition that you're going through. The esoteric phrase for Scorpio, which might offer some deeper insight as channeled by the late Alice Bailey, is warrior am I, and from the battle I emerge triumphant. Warrior am I, and from the battle I emerge triumphant. Our Queen of Scorpio, as named by the listeners of the podcast, you all in our Cosmic Cousins community, is Georgia O'Keeffe. And Georgia O'Keeffe was a Scorpio sun with Scorpio moon, so she was born into this energy. She's also a Scorpio rising, which is quite epic. And yes, her ability to channel her introverted passion through reflection, sexuality, and nature offers us inspiration on how to navigate Scorpio season and the Scorpio new moon. You'll see in the newsletter that I send out. I send a newsletter out for each new and full moon, by the way. And in that newsletter, it's quite literally like a script for the podcast. So if you ever want to read along with me, you can sign up for the newsletter. There's a link in the show notes. But in that newsletter, you'll see that there is, and I'm trying to get better about putting this on the website too. So I'm going to start trying to put the newsletters on the website so you can access it if you're not part of the newsletter. But anyway, so yeah, in that newsletter, you'll see that there is a depiction of Georgia O'Keeffe as the death card in the tarot. This was a collage, collaboration that was created by Tarot Wolf. And the death card shows with Georgia O'Keeffe on a white horse in kind of like this vast open landscape. And there's a king on the ground that's dead. And then there's people praying to death, like, please don't take me, like there's that sort of feeling, but it just feels inevitable. But something that I think is important to know about death and Scorpio, even though it's ruled traditionally by Mars, Scorpio and Mars, it's not necessarily like an intense, like it is intense. It's not necessarily like a full throttle. When I think Mars and when I think Aries, I think of going fast. Scorpio, for me, actually feels quite slow. It's almost like this building that's being knocked down next door to me. it's not happening really quickly. It's a 2-week process. And there's this sort of like underworld energy with Mars and with Scorpio that I feel. And when we see the horse on the death card, it's slowly coming into this scene. And there's a sense of, even when like a rose wilts, all the petals don't just fall off. There's a slow and sensual process to death. And when I see the tree outside my window shedding its leaves, it slowly comes off. So yes, this is the slow and sensual process of death. We can feel that here. We also feel that here in Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings and work. And so on this new moon, we have Sun in Georgia O'Keeffe.
The first year I was out here, because there were no flowers, I began picking up bones.
And new moon in Georgia O'Keeffe.
Well, I wanted to take something home. I wanted to take something home to work on. I had a whole pile in the patio there. I wasn't painting them right then, but I had to get them first.
You getting the vibe? This is Scorpio, fixed water, baby. But we still know, it's not just always slow and sensual, but there is that reflective quality. Georgia O'Keeffe, went on long walks in the desert and would find bones and bring them back home and then paint pictures of the bones. Painting is a slow and sensual process too. So, but Scorpio is still traditionally ruled by Mars, and Mars is not necessarily a slow planet. So let's talk about Mars now and its relationship to this new moon. Mars stations direct this week. And to understand the invitation of this particular new moon and this Scorpio season in general, it's important to remember Mars was retrograde throughout this Scorpio season until now. So we're looking to Scorpio's traditional ruling planet Mars to help deepen our connection. And so as the water sign that's ruled by this very fiery planet, things can get quite steamy here when we bring water and fire together. And so there is kind of this fire energy to Scorpio. And I know a lot of times, people will actually confuse Scorpio as a fire sign sometimes. And right now, even the background on my phone, I made it a phoenix rising from the ash, and there's like all this fire coming out. And so Scorpio, this connection to Mars, Scorpio offers that water energy of emotional healing, of reflection, of renewal through Mars, through desire, through action, ambition, drive. So it's a cool combo. When working with Mars for Scorpio, there is a very piercing quality to it. When we look at the glyph for Mars, it's a circle with an arrow coming out of it. And so it often means being very discerning. You can think of the scorpion, or being honest with yourself, being sharp. And so Mars energy forces us to confront our deepest secrets and to kind of excavate and dive deeper, driving a spike of dynamic understanding into the heart of our shadows. This is working with Mars from a Scorpio vantage point. And so with Mars stationing direct Friday the 13th, just a day before this Scorpio new moon, there is a feeling of physical unearthing. Mars does not like to be stationary in the sky, and particularly, this whole month, Mars is just hanging out at the 15th and 16th degree of Scorpio. And so this is almost like, it feels like if we were going into the underworld, the retrograde period feels like the underworld, and it's when you get to the bottom of the cave, which, by the way, I got to go to Pluto's cave a few months ago in Northern California. I'm just remembering that now. But anyway, I got to go to the bottom of the cave. And then this stationing direct is like, okay, now I'm climbing back out of the cave. It doesn't mean we're out of the cave yet. We are just there at the bottom. And so Mars stationing direct Friday the 13th, just a day before this Scorpio new moon, there is this feeling of we have arrived at the bottom of the cave. There is some sort of physical unearthing taking place. And Mars is so physical, so this could actually look like and feel like purging something out of your body. It might inspire you. Mars is inspirational, but it also might force you to consciously redirect your focus towards carving out a new path for yourself, Mars in Aries. It may even give you an extra thrust or an impetus toward bravely confronting your demons head on, like we're here in the underworld in Scorpio season, Mars and Aries, the warrior. And so either way, Mars direct in Aries is here to aid in a resurrection. It's here to help with this process of rebirth. The retrograde period, this is September 8th through November 13th. So think back the past 2 months. How have you been going down into the depths here on this underworld journey? And now we start the ascent toward resurfacing, which is a complete renewal about who you are as an individual in this world, Mars and Aries. And Mars does not entirely leave this underworld journey for good until January 3rd. 2021, when Mars clears its shadow at the 28th degree of Aries. So that's a big theme. We have the Tower card to reflect on Mars here. And then another thing that's happening for this Scorpio new moon that is pretty big is the third and final Jupiter and Pluto conjunction. So let's talk about that. Again, the Judgment card is Pluto here. If you want to meditate on Jupiter, you could get out the Wheel of Fortune. So the Scorpio new moon is the one time every year, we get one Scorpio new moon every year, in which we are really gifted the chance to sink in, to process, to integrate and reflect, and particularly on Pluto's cycle, the intensity of Pluto. So Pluto is the modern ruler for Scorpio. Pluto is the planet of death, transformation, and rebirth. And it speaks to, really, it's the unconscious mutations of the collective shadow we can feel here in Pluto. And so with Pluto in Capricorn, since 2008, we've been on an intense underworld journey. We're always in some way on an intense underworld journey because Pluto is always in the sky, but particularly since 2008, it has been around the themes of Capricorn. And this is revealing secrets and shadows of the patriarchy. This is Capricorn, authority, government, structures, and the environment. Pluto stays in Capricorn for another 4 years until 2024. And we know that Joe Biden was just elected president, so that's till the end of Joe Biden's term. That would be 2024 is the next election year. And this year, and particularly 2020, is heightened and Plutonian because there's a lot of action happening with Pluto in the sky, you likely know. And so Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto have all been hanging out in Capricorn this year. This Capricorn stellium offers vocabulary around COVID-19 and the pandemic. Jupiter, planet of expansion, right, has been exasperating and magnifying Pluto's theme. So this is like a big death. And then Saturn is kind of the opposite of Jupiter. It's a planet of contraction. So there's an expansion and contraction here around Pluto, and which would also talk about rebirth, And so Saturn has been bringing a tightening to the themes of Pluto, restricting boundaries, So Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn have been hanging out. Pluto and Jupiter align only once every 12 to 13 years, and Pluto and Saturn align about once every 36 years. According to Jasara.news, the last time all three of these planets were conjunct in Capricorn was in 1894 BC. So about, what is that, like a long time ago. So this week in particular is heightened around these themes because this marks the third and final Jupiter and Pluto conjunction. These three conjunctions line up quite literally with the increased death rates due to COVID-19. And so I'll share these dates with you. The exact conjunctions: March 23rd, 2020, July 1st, 2020, and November 12th, 2020. This is when Jupiter and Pluto align in the sky. And so, yes, this third and final conjunction, November 12th, 2020, is proving to be the most intense and heightened of them all. So the reason they aligned 3 times was because of the retrograde. So the July 1st was the retrograde, the return to it. And, I often hear astrologers call these like 3 passes as like Goldilocks and the 3 bears, And the third time it's like, okay, we're getting it just right here. And the third time that planets align can sometimes bring a culmination or even a intensity to the energy. And we're seeing that as the case here. So, yes, the heightened, the most intense aspects of Pluto and Jupiter, the big death rebirth, the cases of COVID-19 are increasing. And so hopefully as Jupiter moves into Aquarius in December, we'll see the numbers drop. So Jupiter and Pluto are aligned right now at the 22nd degree of Capricorn. This is the same degree that Saturn and Pluto met up on January 12th, 2020, when the first case of COVID-19 was announced. So you can look at this point in your chart, Capricorn at the 22nd degree, to offer deeper insight into how the pandemic might be restructuring your life. And you can also, look back to those dates again: March 23rd, July 1st, November 12th. And so I mentioned Joe Biden. Congratulations to Joe Biden, who is the new presidential elect here in the United States. Joe Biden is a Scorpio, and I find this fascinating. So I'm going to read a quote from Joe Biden's commencement speech, and I want you to feel into the Scorpio themes and also the Judgment card themes, which we'll talk about Judgment, which is Pluto, in a moment. So here is a quote from Joe Biden's commencement speech. "I've long talked about the battle for the soul of America. We must restore the soul of America. Our nation is shaped by the constant battle between our better angels and our darkest impulses. And what presidents say in this battle matters. It's time for our better angels to prevail." Really deep and intense. So talking about a battle, we know the esoteric phrase for Scorpio is "warrior am I, and from the battle I emerged triumphant." This is exactly what he's saying. And Pluto and Judgment are both about soul retrieval, and he's talking about the battle for the soul of America. So in the United States Sibley birth chart, Pluto is in Capricorn at the 28th degree. So the United States has this Pluto and Capricorn energy that we're in right now. And so this offers us insight on the U.S. being perhaps, the country that's most impacted by the global pandemic. So here on the Scorpio New Moon, there is this, new moons are preparatory moments. There's this preparatory moment as the United States gears up for its first ever Pluto return. And so I'm sort of mentally and energetically preparing for that. We're sort of in orb of it right now. And so, but the exact date for the Pluto return for the United States is February 22nd, 2022. It's pretty easy to remember. This is 22222. And this is the moment where it's the most heightened. And so the synchronicity of having Scorpio Joe Biden as the newly elected president of the United States during the most heightened culmination of this death rebirth transit feels auspicious, and it feels quite aligned. We talk about Joe Biden's birth chart a little bit more. Shakira in our conversation really talks about Joe Biden's chart. And so if you're interested in that, stay tuned for that. But I do, Biden has had a lot of experience with death and grief in his own life. These are Scorpio themes, from the loss of his wife and daughter to the loss of his son. He also, his compassion when holding space for his other son's addiction to drugs. This is all promising for the United States as we're in this really dark moment in history. A lot of grieving is needed to happen. And so King of Cups, right, is Scorpio. And so we might feel that with Joe Biden here. And Scorpio leader during a country's Pluto return is quite powerful. And so, yes, may astrology continue to offer us an objective perspective as we move through this intense soul purge portal of retribution. So Pluto is, again, the modern ruling planet for Scorpio, and it's represented by Judgment in the tarot, which is number 20. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper into the Judgment card. Judgment is a card in which everyone's shadows rise from the dead, and they're rising to be cleansed and to be forgiven. And when we look at the card, it shows a family. It looks like a mother, a father, and a baby, all naked, rising up from their graves. And the graves are like in the ocean. But across the ocean, on the other side, it is mirrored. It's another family that looks identical to this family, but they're on the other side of the ocean. And they're all naked, and they're all looking up to the same angel here. And so in a time where, for instance, the United States is more split than ever before, I see these two families as, Republican and Democrats. There's this divide here. This is the case, and all looking up towards source. So nothing's able to be contained any longer here in Judgment. In Pluto, the Judgment card is a wake-up call. You'll see the angel has a blaring trumpet that's waking people up out of their graves. So this is complete truth mixed with dark chaos and fear. It is felt in moments when all is revealed. There's like a sudden realization, but not in just your own life. It's a sudden realization of the collective's karma. This is Judgment. This is the last card before we get to the world, which is the final card of the journey. And so it does represent Judgment Day too, but the work here in Judgment is really to realize that the family across the water is your own. Both families are looking up towards the same sky. This card is reflective of Pluto's ability and Scorpio to bring about intergenerational healing and to aid us in moments of soul retrieval. So 2020, remember the Judgment card's number 20. So I'm calling this a double Judgment year. This entire century I consider for meditation purposes as the Judgment century, as the number 20 is present in the first 2 digits of each year. So I offer that to you to reflect on, but we can think of like the year 2000, for instance. This has me reflecting on the entrance into this new millennium as a Judgment double full year. 2020. So the Fool leaps fearlessly into the unknown. So this is us leaping fearlessly as the Fool into a 100-year time period of very Judgment-like Plutonian retribution. So this entire century is the wake-up call. No more secrets. Remember that you are the Fool who signed up here and now for this life's experience. So what gifts do you have to aid us in the collective awakening? We can also think of the year 2016 when Donald Trump was elected as president as a Judgment Tower year, which is interesting because Tower is connected to Mars, and Donald Trump has Mars on his ascendant. But yes, putting Judgment next to the Tower would be 2016, and that was a year of shattering and destabilizing truth in which the chosen leader of this nation represented this mutation of the collective shadow. And so it was equally devastating as it was revealing, and this marks the time of foreshadowing for the years to follow for sure. And so then here we are in 2020, double Judgment. So this feels like the realignment are the meeting point of this entire century's lesson for us all. And so are you listening to the wake-up call? Whatever realignments or realizations are occurring in your life this year, act as an axle focal point to your higher calling. This is for meditation that expands out and ripples throughout the rest of this Judgment century. And so that also calls to mind, if we're at double Judgment right now, 2021, this is the Judgment world year. So what will 21 bring us? The world is the final card of the Fool's journey. It represents the end of a karmic cycle. The world is representative of Saturn, and it denotes one's higher self. This is enlightenment, this is liberation, this is harmony and completion, integration, androgyny. So with Saturn in Aquarius next year, It also calls a focus on Saturn. This is taking responsibility for humanity, Saturn in Aquarius. So this expansive outlook, right? This is very Plutonian. Pluto is the far reaches of our solar system, and it is a generational planet. This is an expansive generational outlook, and it holds this. This is the wisdom of the Judgment card. This is the wisdom of Pluto, and they both aid us in this underworld journey towards psychological rebirth and towards intergenerational healing. So when we find ourselves moving through the energy of Pluto, which we have been this year, or when you find yourself moving through the energy of Judgment, you're not only diving into your waters, you're also digging deep down into the depths of the collective unconscious. It's all being unearthed. So Pluto, Judgment, it can be very indicative of those. Like if you have Pluto strong in your chart, like for me, I'm a Scorpio midheaven. Pluto's hanging up by my midheaven. This can be people who have a higher calling towards bringing transformation to the collective in some sort of way. It can be, Pluto's associated with power too, and there's going to be the shadow side of all of these planets too. But it can be prominent in the chart of politicians and world leaders work with Pluto. Pluto can often, though, take on a behind the scenes role, right? Pluto's the underworld, so this is like the underground, speakeasy sort of vibe. So I find Pluto, it's prominent in the charts of also psychologist, shamanic practitioners, occultist, esoteric ritualist, birth, death doulas, sex workers, tarot readers, astrologers, healers, and grief counselors. So there's many different ways that Pluto might show up in our life. We all have Pluto in our birth chart, and so on this new moon, it does offer you a time to meditate on your Pluto. Everyone's Pluto has been heightened and awakened this year since it is such a Plutonian year with all of the transits happening. And we know it's a double judgment year, 2020. So, yes, happy Scorpio New Moon to you. I'm going to leave you here by, let's drop into the body. We haven't even done that yet. This is something that we like to do here on the show, Embodied Health. Each astrological sign is connected to a different part of the body. And Scorpio rules over the reproductive organs, the genitalia, the bladder, the anus. So all of these parts of the body are super tender and sacred and personal. It is a space that has many layers. I mean, there's so many different themes that we can go into, and it's such a deep part of the body. And so getting to know this part of your body, loving this part of your body, noticing what you store here, taking deep, nourishing inhales into this part of the body, this is all very practical invitations for you on this new moon. And so I invite you into that now. And while you connect to this sacred part of your body, let's just be reminded of the phrases that we have for Scorpio. I unearth, I purge, I renew. Deep, nourishing inhales, wishing for you a transformative Scorpio new moon. And at this time, we'll transition into our deep dive conversation with Kirah Tabourn, who is a Scorpio. And we're going to continue on many of the themes that we've been talking about. So let's transition into that now. Today with us on the show, I'm feeling super stoked to introduce you to Kirah Tabourn. Kirah is an astrologer and creative, the director of Fresh Voices in Astrology, and the founder of NFLUX Magazine, and also the host to the podcast, The Strology Show. Thank you so much, Kirah, for being here with us on Cosmic Cousins.
Hey, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited. I feel like we've been talking about doing this for forever.
I know. I mean, we've been connected for quite some time. I want to say like several years now. And yeah. I think the first time that we met in person was maybe around this time last year in New York City at Buna Cafe, which is one of my favorite cafes. and you were hosting an astrologer dinner meetup at
Mm-hmm.
that time. And yeah, for whatever reasons, it's taken until now for you to be on the show, but it actually feels really in alignment because we're just a few days out from your solar return.
Yeah, a week. It's next Wednesday.
Happy early birthday to you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we're gathering here for this Scorpio New Moon, which is why I invited you at this time. And we get to shine a light to you, which is what we do during one solar return. And so I thought this would be a cool place for us to start. You're obviously a Scorpio sun then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, would you like to share with us what your moon and rising sign are?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a Scorpio sun. Um, I like to add that my sun is conjunct both Mars and Pluto as well.
Yeah.
So it's like super Scorpio.
Yeah, notice that.
And then yeah, my moon is Aries and my rising sign is Pisces.
Okay, cool. So Scorpio Sun, Aries Moon, Pisces Rising. And
Mm-hmm.
here on the show, we do a thing called personal myth making, where we take your
Yes.
sun, moon, and rising and we create a little snapshot scenario of your journey. And so I wanted to, usually I just share that snapshot journey and that's it and we move on. But yours feels really quite complex and magical to me. So I kind of wanted to dive into
Ooh.
it a little bit even more. Maybe it's even Scorpio that's making me want to go deeper into it. But so we'll start with the sun sign. And the sun for me always feels like the character of the story, which is, of course, you. The character here, we could say, is the scorpion. And I'm just curious for you, what is your connection to the scorpion as a Scorpio, and how do you relate to this animal?
That's a good question. I've always had this thing with more spiders than like scorpions, but still I've had this like weird connection to them as being these kind of scary creatures. I don't really think I'm scary nowadays, but I feel like when I was younger, I don't think I was scary either, but I felt like my presence was a lot for people and
Mhm.
I could feel that sometimes like and I think I'm unlearning this a lot now, but like feeling like I was just too much. Um and how the and like intimidating to folks too. That still happens, I guess, nowadays, which my Pisces rising side's like I'm cuddly and soft and but I think the Scorpio, like the intensity can be a lot for people. Yeah, I really relate to Scorpions being like desert dwellers, and not only desert dwellers, they hang out in forests or maybe like jungles too, but thinking of them as this creature that can survive in very extreme conditions.
Mhm.
Um, that's very much like a Scorpio vibe for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that speaks to that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you're bringing up the desert because this is something that when I was thinking about you and as a Scorpio, I was also thinking of the desert. It makes me think of Queen of Scorpio that the Cosmic Cousins listeners chose 2 years ago is Georgia O'Keeffe, who actually like moved
Hmm.
out to the desert from New York City so that she could be like deep in her work and her art. And I know for you, you've recently relocated out to the West Coast and you were spending time out in Joshua Tree and you're
Hmm.
in Los Angeles now. So, what has it been like for you? Because you grew up on the East Coast, you were born in Pennsylvania. What has it been like for you to actually see your surroundings kind of echo on this Scorpio theme? What is it like for you to be in the desert?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, for the past couple years, I was living in New York City for the past decade, and I started to really like intensely crave the desert, and in particular, desert sunsets and sunrises. Like it was something that I would just think about all the time, and it became a really intense craving for me. And so, I would come out to LA maybe every now and then for like for work. I was working in advertising and producing photo and video shoots for various clients and stuff. And I would come out to LA and just be like, why don't I live here? Like it's just so I just feel it feels so right here. And I finally was able to just like bite the bullet and make the move. And I drove out from Pennsylvania, and yeah, it was my second time driving across the country. So I had seen before how like the landscape changes as you drive out west. But this time it was a little nicer even, because we got to stay in Santa Fe and then in Sedona, which was just incredible. And yeah, then getting out here, um, the land here is just so, it feels very magnetizing and then also really grounding for me. And I arrived here in fire season, so I had to like quickly relocate it after like a month or so, because I was living really, really close to one of the fires out here. And we were in an evacuation zone, and so it was just like I gotta get out of here. I can't breathe, and I can't record my podcast, and I can't do client readings. So I just like left and went out to Joshua Tree for 3 weeks. um and yeah, I mean, the extreme of the desert is just, it's so intense, but at the same time it's so like healing as well. There's like this purgative, I don't even know if that's a word.
Yeah.
Yeah. The dryness, and it's so like Martian. Also, Joshua Tree is a Scorpio town. Marcella Kroll told me that last year when I was visiting LA. She was
It
like,
is with
yeah.
Virgo moon. I've looked up its chart because I
Oh my
was so
gosh.
curious.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So it feels right whenever I'm in the desert. Like it's almost like this spiritual experience, which would speak to where Scorpio is in my chart too, in the ninth house. And, about journeys. I tend to have very intense, like journeying experience whenever I'm like, taking some sort of trip or journey. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so intense, but very, very healing.
Yes, which those words, I mean, are words that we would associate with Scorpio.
Totally.
And so the
Yeah,
desert is, if we were to create a world for Scorpio, it might be the desert for us to kind of drop into and tune into. And another word that I love
totally.
that you used was magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said magnetic. And so there is that quality to Scorpio too. And so I'm thinking, your character to this personal myth is the magnetic scorpion. Maybe
Oh, I love
even
that.
the healing scorpion, but magnetic seems like pretty powerful. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that you're also bringing in this side of Scorpio being, I think you said something about being like resilient and like
Mm-hmm.
able to adapt to environments too. And so we feel this in your work and in your ability to hold space in a way that really allows for us to go into a deep exploration. I mean, that's like, it's so nice for Scorpio to have an outlet for what we're calling like the intensity. And so
Mm-hmm.
for you, we feel that with your work in astrology. I mean, you go really deep into what you're doing. And I'll highlight some ways that you're doing that as we go throughout our conversation. But just this word deep, one ways that you do this is through your Deep Seekers virtual meetup.
Mm.
Could you tell us a little bit about this meetup?
Yeah. It's so funny. You had brought up Lindsay Mack a little bit earlier before we hopped on, and I got that phrase, or that the name Deep Seekers came to me while taking her tarot course. And I was thinking, like, what should I name this meetup? And she was speaking on, I believe it was the page of pentacles, and she referred to the page of pentacles as a deep seeker, like these are the deepest seekers of the tarot, or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's it, I love that.
Yes.
um but yeah, my deep seekers monthly meetup, we meet twice a month, and it's a group I run through Patreon. And yeah, we meet up and we vote on a topic, and I'll just kind of lecture on a topic for an hour and a half, and pull up charts, and we'll just kind of chat and hang out. And then um, we do that twice a month. So once a month we'll do that sort of more lecture style, and then the other meetup we'll do is like a tarot circle, or just like a Q&A, and people can just come with any questions that they have, and I'll try my best to answer them. Yeah, it's been really great. I used to do it in person, and when I was living in Brooklyn, I would just invite folks over to my apartment, and we'd do that about once a month. And now that we're virtual and I live, across the country, I wanted to create a space for that, to continue that. So, yeah, we've been doing it online since I think May this year, and it's been really fun. I'm sort of changing things up for next year and doing a different model, but it's going to continue to have like a similar monthly meetup sort of vibe. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sensing into your Saturn and Aquarius here too. I
Hmm.
mean, even hearing like voting on a topic and the collective being involved, and now that it's moved on to the internet too. So
Hmm.
we'll connect with your Saturn and Aquarius in a moment, but let's kind of finish out here with a Scorpio Sun. Um, so if you're interested in this Deep Seekers virtual meetup, I am putting a link in the show notes to all of Kira's website and everything else. So that will be there. You
Cool.
can check that out. And yeah, so another theme about Scorpio that I just want to connect with, particularly here, it's a Scorpio New Moon, connecting to the element of water, also to the theme of death and grief. This is a big Scorpio theme. So this has been such an intense year. And I just got to ask, what has this very heavy Plutonian year been like for you as a Scorpio?
Yeah, it's been very much about resilience. I feel like for a lot of people, but when something about myself that I find like very, very Scorpio is just like, like we were talking about earlier, just this ability to sort of like sit with something and be with it for a while. And, again, this resilience piece. Um, I'm really good at sticking through things, even if they, even if they suck. And that includes like relationships and, it's a very fixed part of me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel like, just trying to make the best out of what you're given. And yeah, I mean, I feel like that everyone has been kind of in that space, but that's really, it's been a vibe for me for sure to kind of be like, okay, how can I use this time? It's the first time in my life that I'm working for myself, and that I don't have like, I have deadlines, but a lot of them is stuff that I'm setting for myself. I don't have like, someone looking over me to check my work and check my progress. And so yeah, there's been part of that has been like being able to rest for the first time in like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
a decade it feels like. Once the pandemic started, I just, and also which, correlated with my Saturn return beginning,
Right.
I was able to just like veg out and do nothing for a couple weeks, and that was quite amazing. I haven't had the opportunity to do that since I don't even know. I guess I don't even know because
Yeah.
I did 12 years of like prep school at like an all girls private school just to get into college, and then get into college and it's like work, 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 and then immediately working after graduation. And so yeah, this year was the first time I was able to like let my mind and body just do nothing. And
Yeah.
that was a really special experience. So, and I think allowed me to be able to like put more energy into the work that I'm doing now. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was gonna
hopefully I can
say,
rest again in January for a little bit. We'll see.
yeah, I was gonna say because you've been working a lot this year. It seems like you've been very productive and putting a lot of work out in the world. So I'm happy to hear that you're also been having time to rest too.
Yeah, well,
Um,
at least in the beginning.
yeah.
Nowadays, not so much.
Well, we know Saturn's about to re-enter Aquarius, and so there could be a bit of a return to what that initial experience was for you,
I'm
which was
hoping.
when what was that? The end of March, Saturn entered
Hmm.
Aquarius? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So are there any sort of personal practices that you have in place beyond astrology that help you to navigate life as a Scorpio, or to navigate like the rest and those sort of things?
Hmm. Outside of astrology, that's a I because I do. a lot of planetary sort of like ritual and um like devotional practices. I was doing a lot more at the beginning of the pandemic, and again, once things started to get really busy work wise, and then I moved across the country, I've been still doing them, but not as much as I was earlier this year. So I've been kind of picking that back up. Just like, daily prayer and, weekly offerings and stuff like that to various planetary deities, I guess you could say. Um, and yeah, besides that, I mean, I've been just trying to stay active, which has been really, really difficult for me this year, especially during this Mars retrograde. But
Right.
trying to just like get out of the house and walk and just maybe do a little bit of yoga and stretch. Like I realize how important that is for my health and well-being, just doing a little bit. And yeah, I'm just trying to keep myself to do like doing that, which is again been really hard during this retrograde.
Yeah. And this new moon is kind of marking this time where Mars is stationing direct too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for this new moon, you're hearing it from Kira. I think all of these are, great things to be doing. Prayer and devotion, yoga, stretching, rest, but also staying active too. So this is some nice practical advice for us here at the Scorpio New Moon. Um, Last thing I want to touch on about Scorpio before we move on is that here at the Scorpio New Moon, I'm reflecting on the fact that we have a new president-elect, Joe Biden, who is a Scorpio. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how you might see Scorpio Sun reflected in Joe Biden.
Yeah, he has this like 12th house Scorpio stellium, with most of his personal planets in Scorpio in the 12th, and then a Taurus moon opposite
Mhm.
all of that. Um, Yeah, I see, his ability. He also, his chart ruler, he's a Sag rising, with Jupiter and Cancer in the eighth house. And so he has this very like dark house, watery dark house energy. And for me, I see that as someone who's really able to sit in grief, and which famously he's had to deal with a lot of personal loss, with his wife and children. So yeah, I kind of see Biden as being able, as like kind of the perfect figure for America right now, in terms of like being able to hold space for us to grieve. Like we've lost, hundreds and thousands of people just this year to this virus that was so mishandled by the current administration, that it didn't have to be that bad, and it's getting worse, right? And so um, I think that before we're able to move on in any sense of the word, it's like we have to be able to grieve those losses, and also grieve like the last 4 years of trauma that we've
Yeah.
collectively been through. And I just feel like Biden, like having your chart ruler in the eighth house really speaks to being able to move through difficult, painful emotional states. And I think that having a 12th house stellium as well kind of gives you this access to that liminal space, kind of in between worlds, where a lot of healing, like pain, suffering, and healing can all occur. So yeah, I'm hopeful that Biden will be able to, kind of like King of Cups style, like
Yeah.
hold that, or help the nation
Mhm.
hold that, as we start to move forward.
Yeah. I'm loving that you're bringing in the King of Cups, fixed water. That's what I use for King of
Mm-hmm.
Cups. And so it is Scorpio. A few things. I mean, while you're saying that, first of all, I almost felt like I wanted to cry. You just naming like the past 4 years and having a new president that is cosmically aligned with helping us process grief. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but, we're also coming up on the United States Pluto return. And
Yeah.
so that would make sense to have a Scorpio president that feels aligned. And also, the United States is a Cancer. And so, hearing that, I think you said Joe Biden has Jupiter in Cancer in the eighth.
Yeah.
And so taking that Cancerian energy of the United States into the eighth house, perhaps here with Joe Biden.
Yeah. Well, the
So,
US, for the Sibley chart, it's like an eighth house stellium as well in Cancer. It's also a Sag rising like Joe Biden.
yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of lineup there. And you didn't use this word when talking about Joe Biden, but it's a word that came up before, but it was resilient.
Mm-hmm.
Scorpio as resilient. And so, seeing the loss that Joe Biden has had in his own personal life too, there's a resiliency too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, really,
And
really
just running
powerful.
for president 3 times. Like after he
Right.
won, I tweeted something like Mars and Scorpio knows what they want and does not fucking stop until they get it.
Yeah, which personally because you have this Mars and Scorpio placement.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is kind of taking us into your Aries moon a little bit here. So,
Mm.
because you are Aries moon, and so since we're talking about Joe Biden, we might as well talk about Kamala Harris too, who made history this
Yes.
week as the first ever woman elected as vice president. Is the daughter of immigrants from India and Jamaica. She'll also be the first Black vice president, the first South Asian vice president. So many first
Mm-hmm.
here with Kamala, and she is an Aries moon,
Yeah.
just like you, which is the first. And so, as the first sign, and so it's quite appropriate. Um, yeah. So, what might you be able to share with us about being an Aries moon, and if you have anything to say about Kamala Harris too as an Aries moon too, that might be cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I always say like my Aries moon is my saving grace because it allows me to just make decisions and like, stand behind them. I feel like my Aries moon makes me very, very ambitious, and having it ruled by Mars and Scorpio just kind of adds a lot of power to that, I guess. A lot of drive and passion. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of how I get shit done. Like I'm very, like I said, ambitious, and I just decide I want to do something, and then I just make it happen. And I think the Aries moon really helps me just like spring into action. Yeah, which I'm feeling really intensely right now with Mars stationing on my moon. But yeah, it makes me very much just like, okay, we're gonna do this thing, and it kind of gives me that like, you could call it courage, but it's really more about just doing and not thinking, and
Mm.
being able to just take action. Yeah.
Yeah. I like you said spring into action too. And we know Aries is connected to the spring equinox on the northern
Mm-hmm.
hemisphere. And when we're tuning into the moon, and so we can continue your personal myth story. We connected to your Scorpio sun. And so we said the character of the story is, maybe we'll say, the resilient scorpion. And now we've connected with your Aries moon, and the moon really creates the backdrop of the scene. It's like the container or the home. And since Aries is the first, you even mentioned feeling drawn to the sunrise earlier. Aries rules over the
Mm-hmm.
sunrise. And so I'm picturing this resilient Scorpio waking up at sunrise.
Hmm.
And we know Aries is also the individual too. So they're perhaps alone at sunrise too. It would help us feel into the individuality of the Aries moon. Um, and you also mentioned the sunset too, though, like feeling drawn to the sunset, and you have Venus and Libra in opposition to your Aries moon, which I found
Yeah.
really fascinating when looking at your chart. So, any thoughts about that balancing act going on?
Yeah. Lots of thoughts.
Lots of thoughts.
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. Like, my Aries moon is very okay with doing things by myself, and making decisions and sort of being selfish when I need to. But my Venus in Libra is like craves partnership, and I also have my chart ruler Jupiter on my descendant in Virgo. And so I'm very just like other people oriented and partnership oriented. Um, yeah, it becomes difficult. Like Venus in Libra, really like, again, just like wants to partner. It's very social. It's a very social placement, and I just love connecting with people. And I think what happens is it makes it so, I do kind of sometimes prioritize other people's feelings, or I can kind of lean in that direction, and then the Aries moon's like, wait, but what about me? And so it kind of does teeter totter a bit, but yeah, I don't know. I'm grateful for both placements for sure. I think
Yeah.
Venus and Libra can get me into trouble sometimes, though.
Yeah. I'm seeing it as some of your aesthetic too, and your connection to art and as a creative. And I'm even thinking about the photo that's coming to mind is you're in water, which, Scorpio, Pisces
Yeah.
rising, and your head's like kind of popping out, which makes me think of Aries ruling over the head. But you do have a certain eye for art and aesthetic.
Oh, thanks.
So I'm just reflecting that back.
I
I
did go
do.
to art school.
Okay, cool. So Venus and Libra would definitely go to art school, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Aries, often called the pioneer, we very much see you as that here in the astrology community in many ways. For one, I mean, you seem to have started practicing astrology from a young age, and we know Aries is connected to being the first or like
Mm.
youth. When did you first start practicing astrology?
Um, Hard to say. I mean, practicing sooner, but I've always been into it. Like I always knew I was a Scorpio ever since I was really young, and my dad had me like memorizing the planets in the order from the sun when I was like 8 or 9, and I was like obsessed with birthdays when I was younger. So I just
Nice.
remembered everyone's birthdays. Like I remember kids from pre-K, I remember their birthdays. Um I'm just remembering like right now it's 11/11. I know this girl I was friends with when I was really young, her like best friend who lived across the street, his birthday is today. Why I remember that? I have no idea. Um,
That's
his
funny. I
name's
have the
Luke.
same thing though. Like I'm like I remember like everyone I went to elementary school was birthday too, and I'm wondering if
Yeah,
this is like something all astrologers have a
maybe. I
skill
don't
at.
know. It's such a weird thing, but yeah, when I was 12 is when I started to like really start to go online and research about the signs. Um, but it wasn't until 2012 when I saw my birth chart for the first time, and I just literally like it was a Saturn transit to my ninth house,
Mm,
Scorpio, and I just became obsessed, and I didn't sleep that night. I just started researching, and I just couldn't stop, and I still haven't stopped, I guess, 8 years later.
yes.
But yeah, so it all started in 2012, and then I started really like I mean, right away, I wouldn't say I was doing readings, but I was constantly looking at people's charts and pulling up charts and talking to them about them. Like at every party, that's all I would do. I would just do it all the time. And so, yeah, I started like right away looking at charts, and then started doing readings formally in 2015, and more formally in 2018 was something like I guess I had a website before, but just, more and more professional, I guess, as I got older.
Yeah.
And yeah, this year is when I went full time.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're feeling that Aries passion here, and also the Scorpio like intensity of like diving into it and staying up all night. But
Hmm.
another way we see your Aries moon expressed, and really as Aries begins to evolve through its story, it's not just about, being the individual or being the one taking action, but it's starts to become a leader. I mean, Aries is the leader for us. And you very much are. You have very much been carving out a path for the BIPOC community, the queer community, and how it intersects with astrology. And so you're really this bold leader for inclusiveness within the astrology community. So I wanted to acknowledge that and bow to this part of you here with your Aries
Thank
moon.
you. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of making me think of you express this in your work, I think most recently as the new director for Fresh Voices in Astrology.
Hmm.
And for those who aren't familiar with Fresh Voices, this is you all offer webinars and summits that specifically celebrate diversity in astrology.
Yes.
And so, is there anything coming up with Astrology Voices that we might need to know about?
Well, we host webinars twice a month. We have one coming up November 21st with Michael Bryan. That's all about Uranian astrology, which I'm so excited about. I'm excited about all of them because
Yeah.
I just am stoked about all of the all of the awesome speakers we continuously have on. But yeah, we have webinars twice a month. All like, not all of them are up and coming astrologers, but most of them are younger. A lot of them queer or BIPOC or both. And yeah, it's a great platform, and I'm really honored to be able to kind of like take over. And I don't know, I'm trying to like figure out how to expand it in 2021 and just like, make it better. I'm really excited for our next summit, which will be in the fall of 2021. And yeah, that's always just, the summits are free, and it's like a weekend long summit with 12 different talks, and you can get access to all of them. And then you can also purchase to kind of help support everyone. And, you get access to all 12 talks for a lifetime. So yeah, we do that every year in like the late summer. And I'm excited. I mean, we have quite some time till the next one, but I've been thinking about it already, and like, thinking about who to invite. And yeah, it's a really great platform. So definitely check it out. It's super affordable. All the webinars are $25 or $30 after. If you can always purchase it afterwards. And yeah, it's a great resource.
Yeah. So you get Astrology Voices on Instagram, or you can go to freshvoicesinastrology.com, and I'll put the links in the show notes to those too.
Cool.
And so we've got this magnetic Scorpion waking up at sunrise. And I feel like we're expanding now into your rising sign, which I'm excited to connect with. And you even said, you use the word expanding. You're like, I'm wondering how to expand this in 2021. Expansion, Jupiter. When I look at this, Pisces rising, I feel the entirety of your fourth quadrant come alive. From Mercury in Sagittarius right on the midheaven to all the planets you have in Capricorn and Aquarius, and then Pisces rising. Like it's like this final like finale here, this final quadrant. So I wanted to touch base into them because I think a lot of people listening will maybe share some of these similar placements to you, because a lot of them are the outer planets. And so, yeah, you have in Capricorn, you've got Uranus, Neptune, North Node, Black Moon, Lilith, all in Capricorn. And so we are expanding out here. And what is it like for you to be working with all this Capricorn energy, particularly during this year when we have, that Capricorn stellium action happening with the current transits?
Yeah. I mean, it's all in my 11th house, and my North Node there really like, I feel like activates that house. And with my Saturn return happening, sort of like consolidating the themes of the 11th and the 12th. Yeah,
Could
I
you
feel
share with us what your connection is to the 11th house? I'm always curious to hear, because the 11th house is kind of, it's this futuristic house. So I feel like we all kind of have
yeah.
a different way to tune into it.
Yeah. I look at the 11th house as, the first word that comes to mind is community. So I look at it as like you amongst others, whether that be your friend group, whether that be, a more local community, whether that be like the organizations or the larger groups that you're a part of. For me, my 11th house feels very much like the astrology community. And then also the 11th house can be things like your audience too. It's about who's supporting you. It has a superior sextile to the ascendant. In a sextile, the aspect, it's the nature of Venus. So there's this aspect of like helping someone out, or being able to provide some sort of support in some way. I kind of think of sextiles as like holding hands almost. So yeah, planets in the 11th house tend to be like, they're almost like made benefic, because they have that sextile to the ascendant, sign based sextile. So yeah, it's very much about the people in your life, especially those who are in support of you and your goals and your visions for the future. The 11th house itself is about also like your hopes and dreams for the future. And it's also, it's the second house from the 10th. So it's also about the money that you make, from the business or from your profession. You can also look at it as like a money house in that way. Yeah, I was going to say something else and I forgot. Oh yeah, it's just like a good house. It's where Jupiter has its joy. So planets there kind of take on like a jovial, benefic nature.
I'm loving that you're bringing, I had never heard that money aspect to it, but it makes a lot of sense to me. And
Yeah.
particularly if you have Capricorn hanging out there too.
Yeah.
So you do have this interest in generations when you're working with
Mhm.
astrology. I mean, one way we could look at this is you said you have Mars in Scorpio, conjunct Pluto in Scorpio. I
Mhm.
would maybe see that like directing your ambition towards intergenerational healing. But I also
Yeah.
feel it in this part of your chart too. As we get into Capricorn too, it becomes expansive. And I think of Capricorn, being at the top of the mountain and kind of gazing out on like, it could be the past, like past
Mhm.
generations, honoring tradition, but also gazing out towards the future too. It has this vantage point here. And you just recently did this really like deep series, I guess we could call it, of post on Instagram, in which you went into the subgenerations of Pluto and Scorpio, and
Mhm.
you used Saturn as a lens to understanding that too. And so, Saturn being the ruling planet for Capricorn too, like I'm sensing it over here in the 11th house. But either way, if you're interested in this, Kira just recently was on the astrology podcast with Chris Brennan, and you talked about this topic. And it's really, really fascinating for anyone who's interested in generational astrology. Where did this fascination or this desire to explore this come from for you?
Yeah. I think I think part of it was just like learning astrology and seeing that I've had like all of the generational planets being, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I had, a personal planet either exactly conjunct, or not exactly, but conjunct it, or in aspect to it. So I have my moon is exactly square to Neptune. My Venus is exactly square to Uranus. My chart ruler Jupiter is trine Uranus, and then I have the Sun Mars Pluto conjunction. And so I always kind of had this. I always looked at that as like, a direct connection to these generational energies. And like years ago, I think around 5 years ago, I kind of decided like this is something that I'm going to put more energy into and start to research and just think more about like the astrology of generations. And yeah, just really interested in how groups of people have a lot of commonalities or similarities, and trying to figure out like what that means, and like, yeah, how these archetypes play out on a generational scale. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know, I've always been obsessed with like our generation. And I think that, we're really special. Even before I learned astrology, like it just felt like our generation was really special. And so um
And when
I
you say
got
our generation,
Mhm.
are you referring to Pluto and Scorpio?
I am
Yeah.
referring to millennials, Pluto and Scorpio. Yeah.
Black Moon Lilith is hanging out here too. Do you work with Black Moon Lilith in your
I
practice?
don't. I know nothing about Black Queen Lilith. Yeah, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that is a thing that I
I feel
don't
her
know anything
so
about.
strongly over here. I
Really?
love working with Black Moon Lilith. It's the placement in the chart that I call the queer witch.
Mm,
And you know, from my studies, Black Moon Lilith is really prominent and individuals who are in the LGBTQIA community.
Mm.
And just seeing Black Moon Lilith hanging out here in your 11th house too. I mean, we've seen in the astrology community in this very Capricorn way that there's a certain hierarchy, maybe a lack of diversity as well. And Black Moon Lilith, from my experience, is wanting to bring in anyone who is on the quote unquote like periphery of society. And so you've been really working within the system to create a platform for those who may not be given the spotlight. And I feel Black Moon Lilith in there, like, you know, doing that. And particularly I think Black Moon Lilith is quite strong for people who are Scorpio too. So that's there for you to reflect on. But she is hanging out with Uranus and Neptune and your North Node all there. So we would even say that there's this element of the queer witch here in your 11th house of community.
Totally. Yeah, I've always looked to like the Uranus Neptune North Node for that. Like, I've always been friends with the quote unquote weirdos, That's like those are my people, the people who are more on the margins. So yeah, it's interesting to hear it, and from that lens. I like that.
Yeah, she kind of brings that. She does have a Neptune Uranus quality about her too, I think, because she is kind of radical and also mystical and magical, which so are you as a Pisces rising. And so this Pisces rising just really like expands it out here into the cosmos. It feels Pisces to me is such a magical sign. And it's also deep at the same time, right? There is that duality of Pisces. And so as we are connecting back to the story, right, we're the magnetic Scorpion waking up at sunrise, making music that connects us with the cosmos, Pisces rising. And so the rising is this like purpose here, or this like maybe even higher calling. This is how I work with the rising. What is the Pisces rising like for you? One thing I heard you say earlier was around 2012 was when you started really getting into astrology, and that immediately went to like Neptune and Pisces, probably right around your ascendant degree, maybe a little bit before, because you're an earlier degree Pisces rising, right?
Yeah, I'm like late 7 degrees. Yeah. Yeah, it had just entered. So it was like hovering above my ascendant. It was probably around like 2 degrees at that point, 2, 3. But yeah, I mean, being a Pisces rising, it's very, I feel like my energy can very easily scatter. And that's not necessarily like a bad thing. I feel, and I think I can't really think about my Pisces rising without thinking about Jupiter and Virgo. And yeah, so I use Jupiter as the ruler of Pisces. I use traditional rulerships. And, with my chart ruler being in detriment and on the descendant, it's like all of my energy is really, it goes outward. Like it kind of gets dispersed towards other people. So yeah, it's, I'm very sensitive. I think that's where the Pisces rising comes in. Not just like emotionally, but my body in general is just extremely sensitive. And, that's part of the reason why I moved to California, is because I'm like, I can't take the cold anymore. Like I need my body to be more comfortable. It's so sensitive to like changes in environment and all the things. So that's a big part of it. But yeah, I don't know. I think my Pisces rising really allows me to like achieve a very deep level of empathy for others. I feel like I'm very Jupiterian in the sense that I I can see all the different perspectives on things, and maybe that's also like a Venus and Libra thing, but I can really like see I like to say I can hold two things at once. Like I can hold two different truths at one time too. Um and yeah, I think it just makes me, I think it makes me likable. Pisces rising. Like people are always like, you're so zen and chill. And I'm like, I guess like, if that's what you're getting from me, I'm glad. Instead of getting the hot, intense Scorpio fire, I would much rather people get the the Jupiter, the Piscean sweetness. So that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah. And with Neptune and Pisces right now hanging out in your first house, this is
Yeah.
definitely probably bringing even more of that energy in right now.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. When it
I
was on my ascendant, that was just like the wildest time.
Do you have an example from that time period? I would be so curious.
Yeah, I mean, I was just I was falling in love with people I should not, like, totally rose-colored glasses situation.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I totally went through this whole like spiritual, revolution with myself. I started to, that was when I started smoking weed every day. That was when I was like falling in love with the Beatles and like Tame Impala and just like, everything was beautiful. I was just able to interact with reality in a different way where everything just felt magical. And, I was learning about manifestation and not like learning about, like just learning about it through making intention and then seeing things play out very literally. And that was, life just became super magical. Um, yeah, it was a wild it was a wild time. It was not all fun for sure. It was a lot of pain, a lot of disappointment, because what Neptune does, it just dissolves all boundaries. And I'm already a pretty boundaryless person. And so,
Hmm.
that became super overwhelming. And it was also like Chiron was conjunct my ascendant at that time, and also the south node, there was like eclipses happening, so there was just a lot of intense like purging of my identity and personality at that time too. It was a wild time. I was also going through like other intense transits, like Uranus and my moon, and Pluto
Wow.
squaring my moon and Venus and all the things, and Saturn wrecking my whole Scorpio stellium. It was an intense time, but Neptune definitely made it magical.
I mean, now I'm like picturing in your story, we said making music that connects us with the cosmos is the end of the personal myth. And I'm like hearing the Beatles like come on now, which is funny. Wow, really cool to hear that example. I, I also had, because I'm Aquarius rising, and when
Mm.
Neptune crossed my ascendant, this was like, I started sleepwalking. Like,
Wow.
I was really into photography at that time, took
Hmm.
so many pictures and films and things like that.
Yeah, I
Um,
went to college for photography at that time too, like right when Neptune entered Pisces, now that I think about it.
do you feel any of this really reflective, magical, like even photography like things coming into your astrology practice? Is it a part of your astrology practice? Who took the photo of you in the water that you have? Like these are sort of things that I'm thinking about here.
Yeah, well, I have a great friend, Jeremy Cohen, who is like a phenomenal astrologer, or sorry, photographer, not astrologer at all. He's a phenomenal photographer that I went to school with, and we knew each other from like day one in New York. We had like all of our classes together freshman year. And actually, that picture was taken the day before the 2016 election, which is
Oh,
wild. We
wow.
were in Jacksonville, Florida, visiting his parents, and it was scary. And yeah, I flew back the next day to vote. But yeah,
Wow.
so it was great. We lived together for 2 years, and it's cool living with a professional photographer. You get some cool pictures of yourself. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah. Wait, what was the question again?
I was just, I mean, that's totally Pisces, right? But
Yeah.
I feel myself floating off right now just listening to you talk about this. But yeah, I was just asking, do you feel like any photography or kind of music or the Piscean
Yeah.
expressions coming into your astrology practice?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I so much so I have to like do a little prayer before I start my client readings. I like to apply um magical talismanic materia, sphere and sundry, shout out, before I do consultations. That looks like sprays. Like I have a Sun and Leo spray that I like to use. I have different oils. And I'll utilize a lot of like magical materia often. And then there's things like, I'm staring at this candle that I carved a couple of days ago for Regulus. Um, yeah, there's a lot. And then, I like to make playlists. I'm like a big music playlist person. And I have playlists for each of the planets. So when I do devotional, like cool prayers or whatever, I will play certain music to kind of get in the mood. I have a whole Friday playlist that's called Venusian Vibes. And when I do my Venus work, I play that music and sort of like try to embody, the Venusian, the Venusian vibes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Music is such a big deal for me. As is just like aesthetics and making things nice and pretty, which is also, I feel like it's definitely like a Venus and Libra thing, but it's also a Pisces mood where Venus exalts in Pisces, so Pisces does have like an aesthetic flavor to it because of that. um yeah, yeah.
Yeah, my Mercury and Jupiter and Pisces is here for all of
Oh
this.
yes. Oh, I love that.
And I'm curious, do you share these playlists publicly, or is this, first house just for yourself?
No, yeah, I share them all publicly. I'm actually like really into sharing playlists. I don't like my planetary playlists are kind of I like I don't even know if people would want to hear them, but if you just search Shakira Tabor on Spotify, you'll probably find everything. Yeah, I have like other playlists that I try to share out with people, especially like Venusian vibes. Um, what else? Yeah, I have like a whole emo playlist, which is also like very Scorpio stellium Pisces rising. I love my emo music. Yeah, stuff like that. I have a whole techno or kind of like house playlist, and yeah, there's playlists for everything, all the moods.
Well, I keep hearing you say list, and I'm just thinking of your Jupiter and Virgo, like across
Oh my
the wheel,
gosh.
all these lists to.
You don't even know, Jeff. It's like you should see right now. There's like post-it notes surrounding me with like various lists, and I'm like wild when it comes to organizing things. Yeah.
Drowning in that
Yeah.
Pisces way in your post-it notes.
Very much so.
Jupiter and Virgo. Yeah. Cool. So it's been so great connecting with you today. To close out our time together, let's just check in. I know you said you're in the middle of creating maybe like a new course, I think you said.
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of teasers on what that new course might be?
Yeah, so I am creating a fundamentals course, like astrology fundamentals. And basically, my goal is to just give folks a really solid framework to work from. Um, and wanting to really help people fill in those gaps, and more importantly, put it all together, which is like the number one issue I think a lot of people have when learning astrology. It's really hard to sort of like synthesize all of that information and put it to use in reading charts. So yeah, the course is definitely for anyone, like from beginner to intermediate. I feel like maybe advanced won't need a fundamentals course, but who knows? Yeah, and eventually I'm also going to do a timing techniques course, because I'm like all about timing. For me, like timing is everything. I just did a whole keynote presentation titled Timing is Everything. So I'm really excited about that as well. Probably come out later next year. But yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be very community oriented too. So I really want folks to like meet other students and, have study groups together. And yeah, I think it's just really important for people who are learning astrology to have other people that are learning astrology that they can talk to, because that I'm just thinking about like, my journey and how the difficulties that I face, like not having astro friends and not having a direct teacher or even mentor, and just sort of like having to kind of figure it out all by myself. I think that was in the end beneficial because it helped me, figure out how I can help other people. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. And that's going to come out in March of 2021.
Hell yes to all of that. And also, in the meantime, you can check out the Strology Show too, which is your new podcast that you just released. I don't know, not too long ago.
Yeah, it was
What
just
was the
late
release date?
August. Yeah,
Late
it was
August.
I think it was the 22nd. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a Virgo.
It's actually the sun was still in Leo. It was
Okay,
at like 29:59 Leo. I wanted to get the sun on Regulus.
there it is.
Yeah, so but it's a Virgo rising with Mercury and Virgo in the first house. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Kirah, for being with us here on the Scorpio New Moon. We're sending big love to you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. This was really fun.
Thank you so much, as always, Cosmic Cousins, for tuning into the show. It's an honor to be here with you, as always. Again, my name is Jeff Henshaw. I'm an astrologer and tarot readings, and I have readings available on my website at cosmiccousins.com. I also have workshop downloads available. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can become a Patreon supporter of the show at patreon.com/cosmiccousins. All the links in the show notes for that. And if you feel called, it would help the show out if you send a rating or you leave a comment and some love on iTunes. And so right now I'll look at one of the reviews. This one was written in by Seriously Ashley, and it says, easy to listen to astrology, 5 stars. This is what Seriously Ashley writes. I love Jeff, first off. Seems like such a kind human being who really wants to impart astrology knowledge and also bring awareness to important social issues of our time. Thank you so much, Seriously Ashley, for writing in. And, I look forward to reading your comments. And you can also follow me on Instagram at cosmic.cousins. I haven't been posting as much. I've been kind of feeling a call to take a break from that social media platform. But I do post on the new and full moon there. And so you can follow me on cosmic.cousins. And I'll leave you with some Scorpio New Moon reflections. So again, Scorpio rules over the reproductive organs. So sending love to this part of your body. Scorpio New Moon this weekend, November 14th and 15th of 2020. And some questions that I have for us for reflection are this. What deep desires lie beneath the surface ready to be unearthed? What are you willing to let go of and release to make space for the new? Again, we're connecting with the color red. We're connecting to water to help aid us in this process of release. And so letting the parts of you that are ready to die to shed away. And so sending you all love here on the Scorpio New Moon. I'm wishing for you a deeply transformational and healing Scorpio New Moon. And I'll see you next time. Take sweet care, cousins. And remember, deep breaths.